Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2024 Judge Training. I'm Jerry Miller.
I'm Mark McGahee.
And we're excited to talk with you a little bit about the area judge process that you're about to undertake. We want to first start by thanking you for your service, thanking you on behalf of the programs you're about to see, and the opportunity that you have to help guide and shape their process, whether they are finishing their season at area prelims or area finals, moving on to state. This is such a valuable tool that we're allowed to present to you and give us the opportunity to just kind of dive in deep to the process. This is good.
Yeah, this is, I believe, the fourth year in a row of our training. We get so much great feedback from everyone. And with many of you being new to this process, I think you'll hopefully find this very enlightening. We'll try not to be too boring, but we'll also try to give enough information to help you be successful. As the bands are being better and better each year, we're hoping the judging process and the people that are evaluating will also be just as honed in.
Absolutely. We're going to start with a welcome video from Dr. Brad Kent, so take it away, Dr. Kent.
Hello, my name is Brad Kent, and I serve as the UIL State Director of Music. I would like to take this opportunity first and foremost to thank you for your service as a judge. On behalf of the over 1,000 marching bands in the UIL process in the state of Texas, we appreciate you very much. We're always seeking the very best, most qualified judges to evaluate our bands, and we believe that you are among those, and so again, we appreciate you very much for being here. I would also like to thank the Texas Music Adjudicators Association, specifically Jerry Miller and Mark McGahee, for their ongoing service in this project and for putting together today's training for you. We hope you find the information to be both informative and valuable and helpful as you prepare for this most important evaluation process for our bands at the end of the season. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate your service.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kent. So we're going to start by talking through some of the guidelines for judging marching band. First and foremost, the adjudication of the groups should be based solely on the performance of the day, not on the past reputation of that band or the director. It's important that you do your best to be very consistent. If you feel like you miss one, just kind of start over and reset yourself. Look, we all make mistakes, but it's important to remember that competition suite is our friend. We would rather have one mistake that gets corrected on competition suite than have one compound into 14 or 15. If you slot a group and you realize in that first block I went a little too low or a little too high, make that adjustment and you have the opportunity to fix it so that we have a clean recap at the end of the day. Anything you want to say about just competition suite and judging consistency?
Yeah, the key, I think, that first phrase that Jerry just mentioned about the reputation of groups, all of that is irrelevant. It comes out whether you know someone, know the group, oh no, this is a group that's a usual find, doesn't matter. It's the show of the day, it's the performance in front of you. Competition suite in general, I think, will help keep you pretty grounded when we start going and delving into that quite a bit. But I think that's the process. If you follow the rules and kind of think about, I'm just really focusing on this snapshot in time, that's usually the most helpful.
Absolutely. In addition to that, I think we have to be really careful about talking to judges. When we're judging, when we're on that panel, I think there is a natural flow and a dialogue when you finish your sheet, when you enter your scores. I mean, we don't really use sheets anymore, but when you finish your notes and you enter your scores, be really visually obvious about setting the tablet down, taking the headset off. If you're going to talk to that judge, what we don't want, especially where the crowd has a close proximity to you, is Absolutely. They see, hey, what'd you do on that one? We need to refrain from that. We need to do our best to adjudicate the show of the day. And if you want to talk college football, you want to talk something else, all fine and good. But I think that we keep our conversations regarding bands to ourselves until after the show is complete.
I can think of my most recent area judging assignments. One of those, which I think we all probably imagine, we were sequestered in a press box area that was very isolated. It's just the judges there, and again, we're trying to not talk and politic for another group. And I can remember another follow-up one where that night we were literally in the stands. There's people that their things marked off, but there's 2 or 3 people away. The eyes are on you. They're listening to you. They've got their pom-poms in front, and here comes my group, and you're all aware of that. They're aware of what you're saying in addition to the proximity. So it happens, and that's an area contest and another area contest. So different scenarios, but again, it's the relevance of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into some of the guidelines for judging marching band, and this is going to feel very 30,000 foot view, but this broadcast is intended for our newer judges. If you're a returning judge who's watching this, thank you for sharpening the saw and diving in with us today. I'm just going to kind of read a little bit for a second here, but we have 5 divisions that constitute the UIL scale of excellence. We're going, or 5 boxes, if you prefer. We use this rubric, this placemat, in our adjudication of the groups. It is so important that you are justifying your score to that rubric placemat by using scoring specific language. And we're going to talk about that during our new judge section. We're going to revisit it as we get to our returning judge section too. If you are judging with paper sheets, which I will tell you are more and more rare, there are few, I think there were maybe 2 areas last year that use paper sheets. Most have moved away from that and are strictly using verbal comments and competition suite. But if you are, take a second to write something professional, take a second to utilize the sheet, honor the intentions. That area probably had a conversation about wanting to keep the paper sheets. So let's not just, write C tape or whatever, C file and underline. Let's just go, if that's what they want, we're there at their request. We're working for them that day. Let's give them that. Be sure that you speak and or write, but speak as if an administrator is going to hear it. There are some administrators, some principals, some fine arts directors, some superintendents who do engage with the judging files. They want to hear that. But as well, speak as if the students are going to hear it. We all got into this as teachers, and we want to continue that teaching and that education role. We didn't get into music education to become judges. So, this is an opportunity for outreach and to connect with the program, and you kind of have a sense of what type of advice that group needs based on the performance of the day.
We can all think about that judging recording that we've had where we did play for the students, and there was a great dialogue, not just being a cheerleader for the group or a champion for the group, but again, like, wow, that was really insightful, where we all learned something. And I think we all should aspire to do that. We should be that person where we're trying to give them our best each time. And you mentioned before, the audience is a lot more broad. It does become archived where anyone could hear it. It's the administrators, the principal, it's the parents. The parents are so tell us about this. Why did they say this? And it really has been some great points of dialogue.
Yeah. I think that we want to be mindful of the language that we're using when we get to the end of the file, that you're justifying the score that you're about to write down with the comments you've just made. I don't that whole like Monday morning quarterback approach to judging, where you get to the end of the file and you start talking about phasing, let's just say, hey, but you never commented on it during the show,
right?
Then you know what, it wasn't as big an issue. Like, that's the thing, is it has, if it's part of, you have to just reflect back on the substance that you just recorded and say, these are the things that are measurable, these are the things that I recognized, measured, and rewarded. This is where we are scoring wise, as opposed to kind of Monday morning quarterbacking and going, thinking back to that, like, there's not really an opportunity for us to do that. We need to react to what we say in the moment. We do want to address all the descriptors. And so I'm certainly guilty of, at some point looking down at that printed sheet, again, whether you're using printed sheets to write on or whether you just have one for your reference, and going, did I miss anything? At a moment in the show, I'll just kind of glance down and make sure that I feel like I've covered absolutely everything. I always want to say, like, these are sometimes our worst enemy, just from that whole idea of focusing on the day. I think keeping that phone out of sight and out of mind is a good idea as you're judging. What else on that?
Well, and as you say that, here's my phone over to the side where I'm going to put it out of sight, out of mind. So well played there. It's the being intentional is probably the best way of thinking about it, and being aware. Try not to be distracted. I think all of those are highlights that come to my mind, and it's hard sometimes because you're getting fatigued. We'll talk about it in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's being fresh. It's being focused on where it's the 20th band you've heard or seen, but yet it's their first time. Mm-hmm. It's their first time, and you have to focus on this. I have to give you my best because it is your one shot, second shot, etc., to move on to this contest.
Absolutely. So a few more things in this area, just a couple more slides to share with you. Big 30,000 foot view is where we are right now. There's no official style for marching band in Texas. Texas is not a corps style state. We're not a military style state. We're not a show band state. We're everything. Mm-hmm. We're whatever you want. In fact, we're going to embrace the style that hasn't been invented yet that one of our directors is going to come up with. Sure. And that's exciting. Right. Every group is going to project a unique identity. It's our opportunity as judges to experience and kind of live in that moment with that group for those 15 minutes that we're with them. Mm-hmm. In that same vein, all programs begin with an equal opportunity for success. A program that only has that one tuba player and you see them coming out there and you're like, oh buddy, I hope you can hold it down. Right. When that kid does hold it down, like, we recognize, measure, and reward what they do. Every program is going to begin with a perfect score, maybe, is a way to think about it. And the courses and the choices that the designers have made, that the arrangers have made, that the band directors and the student leaders, down to the individual performers on the field that day, all of those decisions are going to, sadly, prevent them from earning a perfect score, but it's going to help them land where they are. But we need to recognize, measure, reward, and speak to what is achieved on the day. What else about that?
Back to one of your first comments, the Texas has a signature of excellence, and like you said before, you could almost go to any other state and say, "Oh, that's a core style state," or this is a group that does this, and you kind of have these general impressions of them. And I love the fact that we have so many different styles represented. 3 or 4 come to mind, and there's excellence of all of those. I think when you let's say it's a style you're not used to, or a style you never taught, and you are evaluating that one, excellence is excellence. And you could say the parameters regarding to the sheets that are happening there, and when it's something like that, man, give it up for them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that is awesome. Maybe it's not something you've been brought up in, or the teaching style. And I love the fact that we have excellence in a variety of ways, where no one can say Texas is just this, but they can say there's a gold standard with a variety of ways to approach it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Lastly, there was a day and time as area judges where I think we were being told to kind of like talk about contest discrepancies or rules things. Right. Those days are in the past. If you see something that you maybe feel is a rules violation, that's not something that goes onto the band's file. Mm-hmm. That's something that you address with that area executive at the end of the round. If you feel there's something judge-wise, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Mark. Mike Howard also helps us in that process of kind of watching those area days. Reach out to one of the 3 of us and say, hey, I'm seeing something judge-wise that's concerning. But the same, if you see an adult at the mixing board, or what you perceive to be an adult at the mixing board, right, that's not going to go on your file, on your judge file, and that recording you're making. That's just something you're going to go find that area executive on a break or something and say, hey, with XYZ high school, I think I saw this. You just might want to address it. So just kind of be mindful that our role is not to enforce the rules of the contest. Mm-hmm. We're there to judge the bands. I think it helps keep your focus where it needs to be. Just last 3 points here on this. Remember that we are teachers first and judges second. As I said earlier, we got into this music education world to be teachers, and so putting on your teacher hat really makes you the best judge, in my opinion. Everything that we write, everything we say, should positively enrich the lives of these teachers and these young people that are on the field. Our primary concern should be their welfare and their growth. Mm-hmm.
Again, used the word inspirational a while ago. In anything that you feel like you can make a positive impact and influence the program. Sometimes it is a dose of medicine everybody wants to hear, like, oh, today it's the way we certain sound, or like our marching's not as clean as we thought it was. But I guarantee you those will be impactful comments moving forward for the plan for next year, or being able to understand, hey, here's kind of where we live in a certain neighborhood, and we're going to plan on moving ahead. And the motivation maybe that teacher needs or that group needs to say, we're going to step up our game next year. And then you can come up with some very positive ways to present that in a course of a contest.
We're now going to talk about what you do before, during, and after the judging experience. It's just kind of a walkthrough of the day for our newer judges, or maybe some reminders for our veteran folks. First is familiarize yourself with your surroundings. Look at the conditions that you're going to be judging in. Is it open in the back? Is the sun going to be in your face at some points? You want to have a hat. You want to have sunglasses. Maybe is the crowd really close to you? Are you more in a window type setting, and making sure that the posture you choose, and I think about this a lot when I'm judging in like a windowed room. If I lean forward, then I'm leaning forward all day because I want to get that same read on every group. So kind of just really familiarize yourself and be sure that it's a place you can be for the next 8 or 10 or 12 hours. Make sure that your recorder works in Competition Suite. We're going to do, or I'm going to produce for you a little side video about it. When we first rolled it out 3 years ago, we did a lot during the judge training with it. We're not doing that anymore, but I'm going to do a little kind of Competition Suite 101 walkthrough with everybody. So if you need that, check it out. But make sure your recorder works. What I do, and I think you do this too, I think we've talked about this, I record it and then I make sure that the person on site listens to it, which they're going to do, but I also go into the app on my personal device and I listen to myself on my phone and go, I sound a little loud, I sound a little soft, move this closer, move this farther away. But that's just kind of a good rule of thumb, and I'll talk you through that in a separate training. Make sure that you begin by always identifying yourself, your name, area prelims, area finals, judging music, judging visual, what have you. Your field references are really important to them too, especially our music judges, but visual too, to say, I'm on the 40-yard line side 1, I'm on the 35-yard line side 2, and judging visual, you're going to pick up on some diags that other folks may not see. So it's important for them to know that, so that as they head on to state or even just into finals, they have a good understanding of what different judges are perceiving.
Going back to one of your first comments about the preparation for the day, something I learned from veteran judges was having a judging bag, and that's the one I take with me to any contest I have. It always has a hat, it has the sunscreen, it has something. There's a version of a raincoat if I needed that. Not that that's going to ever rain in Texas, right? But especially having all these items readily available. Sunglasses, having that with you. I know many times I'll comment just to let them know, like, I recognize that it's really windy today, and I'm a little ahead of time, not to build in excuses, but I know what you're dealing with. Good luck. The sun is in your eyes. Here we are. It's the middle of the afternoon, and I know it's going to be some challenges, but I know you're going to give your very best. I think that's as important as setting the tone of where you're judging from, but recognizing those conditions and maybe some challenges that could be color guard comes to mind. Something that they're going to be able to have the skill of recovery, and that is going to be real important today, as maybe it's a little bit more windier than when they've been practicing the last few days.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about our recorded commentary needs to provide accountability for evaluation, for criticism, and useful information. Additionally, the tone of the commentary should be helpful and geared towards student listening and learning. I love that in a recent training I was watching for, I think it was a DCI training, somebody said, I'm your biggest fan for the next 15 minutes. Right. I'm here to just talk about all the great things going on in your program. Now inside of that, I'm going to deliver some constructive criticism because I am a teacher, I am a band director, I do have things I want to say to you, but at the same time, I'm invested in your program. For those 15 minutes, I put myself in the role of a helper, a volunteer inside of your program to offer you the best feedback that I can. I think it's also really important that we're judging through time. By that, what I mean is sometimes we can get really tied into the first 15 seconds of something and the first 30, and then we kind of trail away a little bit. Try and be mindful that you're giving a good focused look over the whole show, over the entire course of those 8 minutes, and inside of that as well, that you're not letting your pet peeves, if you're a percussionist,
fixated on something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a percussionist and you hear something that just you do not like the tuning of the bass drums, say it once, you're done.
Right.
That's it. I don't need to hear 5 times in the recording that you don't like that ours are tuned in fourths instead of minor thirds. That's your preference. You can state that preference by all means, but at the same time, that's an opinion, not really a statement of fact that's impacting the performance heavily.
Sure. tuning comes to mind. Like it's set there. By you saying it over and over and over, you're addressing it. You can address it once. Here we are again. It's a shorter comment. There's nothing that they're going to fix on the fly that they've not been already preparing to happen. I mean, it is what it is for that moment in time. But again, move ahead and not become too fixated on it. Pet peeves, as you said before, it could be a balance situation, or it could be just something that's driving you crazy on some of the training. Address it, and you can still find a way to frame it where I'm going to address this in a way that does come across as I'm talking right to you face to face with it. It's not being condescending in overall tone, where it comes across as like I'm above you, but it's going to be like, oh, this is great, and we're going to find better ways to keep making this even more refined.
Absolutely. Keep in mind too that unlike the concert division on the UIL front, or where written comments are our only means of communication inside of when you go to concert and sight reading. Here, the spoken word is pretty much all they're going to experience from us, and like with the written comments, or nowadays at concert and sight reading, so many of us type comments. If you type something that's you read it, you're like, oh, that sounds a little angry. You go back and delete it and, rephrase. We don't really have that opportunity. What we do is what we do. And so I just think we need to be really mindful of our tone, especially as the day wears on and it's hot, or as you said, it's raining, and just all the things that we're dealing with environmentally, that we keep that same very teacherly tone over the course of the day, because how we say things is just as important as what we're saying.
Absolutely. You referred to earlier, speaking over the judging over the course of time. Don't feel like you have to fill dead air time. Feel like, if I'm not saying something, they don't feel like I'm addressing them. And that's really the opposite. You being able to assess what's happening, address what's happening. I think we all struggle with the multitasking. I'm speaking, I'm giving a comment, but yet you're still trying to listen to what's happening. And we all know that from a teaching standpoint of like, they're not even listening to this right now. They've been talking over the last 30 seconds and they missed the cool solo. Being able to find that I'm okay with saying something, being able to hear the next idea, especially I know this is coming, and then I'm going to be able to pause and reference that on a shorter term. Do not feel like you have to fill up as much time as the performers are.
Right. Well, and you went right to my next comment, which is it's not easy to listen while talking. Just ask your spouse or significant other. You have to let the show come to you, right? It's not like, I've always used the analogy of like standing on the beach, like you can let the waves come to your feet or you can run into the waves. When it comes to judging marching band, let those waves of sound come to you, let those visual ideas come to you, and then react to that. But Mark's right, when you're reacting to that one, you're probably not able to pick up on that, but that's why we have 3 music judges. That's why we have 2 visual judges. So while Mark's reacting to, a musical thing he heard in the high brass, and he's, talking during a woodwind moment, I was listening to that. I was talking previously, so I was listening to that woodwind moment. So that's why those programs get the balanced feedback that they get from us. So just kind of be mindful of that ebb and flow. During the performance, I think, too, I tend to try and keep my comments as succinct as possible. And then I have like a little, yellow notepad that I'll write just a word on: articulation, body alignment. And then at the end, when I'm doing my wrap-up, I can look down at that and go, guys, I referenced a couple times some articulation things. Let me just talk with you for a minute. And now I can take a full, and I mean, we say a full 60 seconds. But in the marching band world, a full 60 seconds is a lot, because that next show is coming.
Right.
Save that longer explanation for the end, rather than doing a 60-second articulation spiel over their entire percussion moment. And then as a music judge, they're like, well, this was our highlight, and you talked right over that. But again, we don't have that long till the next group, and you need to close up those comments. You need to get your scoring done. You need to make sure that you're tracking your numbers, which we'll talk about some more. You might need to take a sip of water. You might need to stretch. So it's going to be mindful of all of those things.
One thing I had to learn, especially early on in my own judging, I felt like I wanted to justify, or I feel like I wanted to go in depth because maybe I had more knowledge in a certain area. The balance of time I spent on that, and then I was rushed to put my numbers down, probably one of the most important parts, whether it be 50-50 or whatever area is. We do know those are substantial where, okay, I'm having to then like, oh no, that's really, I don't have enough time. Learning to be more succinct and being able to say, here's what I have to have, and there's like an internal clock going off where I'm going to pause this, I'm going to wrap this up, so I give myself enough time to really do the ranking rating that we're going to go in depth on a little bit and do that justice. It's okay to do that, get those wrapped up, and then give yourself, okay, I got to let my brain rest for a little bit for the next group, and that's when I think it wears you out through the course of time.
Absolutely. And to put more pressure on you, not that we want to, but we're going to, the words you use need to match descriptors, terms on the placemat. We're gonna listen to some exemplars in a little while together, and as we listen to those, my hope is that you're hearing, and these are all great judges you're going to listen to, you're going to hear them literally taking terms right off of the sheet and marrying that, kind of like, we'll get geometric here, that XY axis, they're taking the term off the sheet and marrying it with a word like consistently, and marrying it with a word like sometimes. And so as you hear those go through, it's like you're plotting that score. And I think, as an adjudicator, my aim is that when that band listens to it, they can step away from my file going, he has this middle of box 4,
exactly.
Based on the language he used, the way that he said consistently but not always, you just felt like in listening to my file, you're like, his number is going to be middle box 4. Okay, fair. Like that I think is us doing a great job. But as we said, you're not going to catch every moment. You have to let that show come to you. Lastly, just kind of putting on your band director hat for a second. Some directors may get a little dismissive over one comment where you say, I really felt like the tone quality, the use of vibrato in this flute solo was
not appropriate.
I think that we have to just be mindful of saying things as if the student were right in front of us, as if that sweet kid who we said, you got this, and you're going to go out there and you're going to rock the solo and you're going to be great. And we put them out there, and maybe it wasn't their best day, and they just had their orthodontist just did a ton of work on Friday, and they get to area on Saturday. Yeah. That we're talking to them just like we go, hey, that was a really great performance. Continue to explore these things. So just again, that tone quality that you're using is so important. Lastly, and we've mentioned this a couple times, be ready for the length of day. And be ready for your body, your mind, your tongue to feel differently at 9 a.m. than it does at 9 p.m. as you're finishing up finals. And so to that same comment about letting the show come to you, if you try and talk for 8 straight minutes over every show, when you get to those later groups, you're going to physically and mentally struggle. As opposed to when you're kind of pacing yourself over the day. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So, running that marathon, just be mindful of pacing yourself because you got to get all the way through finals. And you want those last few groups in finals to have amazing feedback, right? I mean, you want them to get because those are the groups that are advancing on, and you don't want to be so tired that your brain's just, starting to shut down on you.
Yeah, those mental breaks, I think, really helpful. And as much as I always feel like at the end of the day, like I'm going to have to be, I'm going to be a little more over energetic. When I get to that and actually compare the files, it's like, okay, that sounds pretty even. And I maybe feels like I'm exaggerating, but I'm just trying to match the energy level of what happened before. Getting a little more tired, whether it be caffeine or water or standing up and stretching in between, that kind of gets you revitalized.
Absolutely. When you get to that moment of decision and it's time to write down the score, formulate a score that reflects your appraisal of their performance in comparison with the bands in that classification and what you understand historical norms to be. Now, let's say that you get assigned to a contest that's maybe it's a 3A contest and you've only ever taught 4A and 5A, and so you go, well, it's close to 3A, but it's a little different. Go on YouTube. Check out some groups. Sure. Go watch last year's. I'm sure that if you Google most of last year's finalists, if you go search them up on YouTube, you're going to find that video is going to be up there from state. You could see, okay, well, that's what a state finalist looks like. I wonder what and you can kind of like, don't look at the groups that you're about to be judging, but you can look and take some other samples from around the state and see those historical norms so that you feel really, secure in, I'm judging 3A today, and I know what the 3A state champion looked like last year. I know what the last group in finals looked like. I know what, one of the lower end groups from state looked like. But also, let the placemat be your guide on the day. If you're using the placemat consistently over the course of the day, and like I said, it's that XY, you have this listing down the column of all the descriptors, and you're just plotting where do they sit along that in terms of consistently, in terms of always, in terms of sometime, how consistently, very consistently, always, or mostly always. You can begin to kind of identify those, and that's going to help you be very consistent for you on the day as a judge. So the placemat is your friend.
Here's a pro tip along the way. We're practicing, and you maybe have done this, maybe you've never done this, taking 1, 2, 3 YouTube videos that you ready to pull. You record yourself along the way. I think all of us will be, wow, I felt like I was babbling in this part. You're focusing on that. Go even deeper and realize when I get to the end of this, without thinking about what score I put down, by the verbiage that I use, by the key descriptors I use, what range would I probably have said, this is probably the score I was going to put down? And then you may go, wow, I didn't really mean that at all. Like, I was way too flowery in my comments, or like, why was I being so harsh? I really like them. And I think that's as much insightful as in learning pacing, learning to be able to speak clearly and articulate.
Well, and for our returning judges, if you haven't seen, and again, I'll do this in the competition suite video, you can go back and listen to recordings from a year ago. And I think there's something to listen to a recording you're not emotionally connected to that helps. Sure. If I listen to recordings that people have made for my groups, there's like a defensiveness. Right. You say that kid's name in your head, you're like, oh, what were you thinking that,
Sure.
Like all of those processes go into it. But there's something to be said for just putting on a random YouTube video of a group you don't know, of a group you've, just pick a Texas group and watch it and do that file and then go back and listen to it and go, sometimes I would kind of draw a line down the page and I would say, how many positive remarks did I make? How many negative? I would also, and we're going to talk about this later, I'd play the what-how game. Did I say what they were doing? And then did I say how they were doing it? Because sometimes my how column would be a little heavy.
Sure.
Because I would just go, oh, trumpets, oh, this. And I'd be like,
tape,
and you'd go like, well, let me make sure that I say in this double-tonguing passage, so that they got a little bit of that. So listen to exemplars. Again, we're going to hear some today, so don't worry. And I have the full versions on a Google Drive that you can hear the full 8-minute, opening, intro, all of the things, the wrap-ups, all of that will be there for you to enjoy, so you can check that out. So let's just one last thing kind of inside of this is sharpen the saw. Be as informed as you can about what's going on in the marching arts. Hopefully you are taking the time to maybe go to a drum corps show this summer. We have tons of them here in Texas. That you've gone online and watched some videos, that you've seen that you're aware of what's going on the WGI side, that you're aware of what's going on the Bands for America side, that you're seeing all of those things, and maybe even beyond that, like you've gone to a Broadway show, you've gone to an art museum, you're infusing all of these different inputs that programs bring to the table in your life, so that when you do see a show that involves Kandinsky, that you're like, oh, I saw this recently. I have a reference, I have a frame there. So just kind of have that open mind. I'm always excited to first, there are show themes. Let's just pick West Side Story, right? How many West Side Story shows have we judged over the years?
Too many.
Several a year, right? There are show themes that I'm always excited to see again. I love a good West Side Story show. By the same, there are show themes that I'm like, wow, I never thought you could make a marching band show about that.
Yeah.
But I love that open-mindedness that our judging community has to be like, yeah, bring it. Like, let's see what you got, and show me something that I didn't know a group could do.
Sure. You had mentioned many visual comments. I think probably even more accessible would be the professional musical group. It's an orchestra, it's a band, anything where those are so accessible. Marrying those ideas together and definitely keeping an open mind. It doesn't have to be, well, that's not how I would have presented that, but let's say maybe it's a very contemporary look with an old traditional favorite, and being able to find something that's an orchestral concept, but then you got this whole other way of let's create it with this type of soundscape, and let's create this kind of costuming that goes with it, where everyone is looking a certain way, I think, man, just bring it on. It's got innovation written all over it.
Yeah. Well, I think we did a session when we did the first round of these coming off of COVID. Jody Rhodes was one of our interviewers on the visual side, and she goes, look, if you're going to do Rhapsody in Blue and bring out everything orange, she's like, I'm open to that. I don't know what you're going to say to me, but I'm open to the idea that Rhapsody in Blue doesn't have to have a blue flag.
Yeah.
You know, it could have an orange flag, and I'm going to go, what is the juxtaposition they're going for here? So, you know, that open-mindedness, that curiosity, I think is what makes a judge great, that you're like, that's a curious choice. Oh, you're going to mash up Beethoven and Christina Aguilera? Sure, let's figure out what that's going to be. So, just kind of some things to continue to work on. We're next going to talk to you about ethics as a judge. We're going to talk about things like affiliation, consultation, bias, professionalism, social media, and integrity. I think that in the marching arts, again, not to say anything different about what goes on in the concert and sight reading side of life, but the marching arts are one of those things where I think that we're very carefully monitored we're right in front of a whole lot of parents. There are just a lot of things to be mindful of as you take on this role of being an adjudicator in the UIL system. So I'm just going to kind of read you a little bit. I apologize. We'll let Mark do some color commentary because I'm going to be real dry with this. But when it comes to affiliation, a judge can't adjudicate a contest in which a competing ensemble has a recent affiliation with that adjudicator. So a formal affiliation would be that you served as a head director at that school, an assistant director, a drill writer, a music arranger, a show coordinator. If it's been several years, my advice is to reach out to that area executive or let me know, hey Jerry, I was the assistant band director at so and so until 8 years ago. 8 years ago is probably not going to flag for us.
Right.
If you say I was the assistant there last year, that's going to be, if you could name kids on the field and you know the name of the trumpet soloist, that's a problem.
Right.
So just let us know. It's not going to negate your assignment at all. We're just going to switch you with somebody else to make sure that we put you in a position where you have no affiliations. The secondary affiliation one is one that I appreciate you monitoring, which is if a family member, if someone you have a close personal relationship with is a director inside of that area you're going to be judging. I had one director reach out recently. He says, my assistant from 4 years ago. And so we reached out and just made sure that we were all clear with it was 4 years ago. And, you know, this individual left on good terms. There's no bias or anything like that.
Right.
But just be transparent. And I think sometimes we're hesitant because we go, oh, I really want to judge area. Trust me, I don't want to have to move anybody around and have them lose an assignment. It just may mean that instead of going to Houston, you're going to go to Austin, right? It may mean something as simple as that, as we just need to do a 1-for-1. Or it may be that you were going to judge 2A and you're now going to judge 4A or vice versa. So those things happen. Anything on affiliation?
Yes, the term comes to mind is optics. The appearance of something, the perception. You may say, no, I'm very ethical. I can be able to handle that. We don't want to have anything that appears to be an unbalanced playing field, where someone gets extra points before they even walk on the field, or conversely, well, that's always been my nemesis band, and I'm going to keep them in their place. Anything that has that appearance, that we're trying to remove that, where everyone has the exact same chance, the exact same moment of time, where you can say, you know what, I'm going to be able to see this not through rose-colored glasses, but it's going to be something where I'm going to love each group for what they are, with no bias.
Yeah. When it comes to consultation, prior to judging, at this point you're watching this video, you already know what area you've been assigned. You may not give technical or programming advice to any of the ensembles who could possibly be at area. Even if you go, a director reaches out, well, we don't usually qualify. Well, you know what? If they get your advice, they might earn that first division at region. So just be really mindful that those groups are off the list, even if it is someone who, does ping you and says, hey, would you mind looking at this? Now, hopefully, as well as directors, you all know who's going to be judging your groups at area, and you know that list of 5 individuals is someone that you just steer clear of this season. And sometimes, I remember there were years where it'd be somebody who I really did want to ask their advice, and you just couldn't that year. It just that's the way the cookie crumbles, as we say. So just be mindful of the consultation piece. Don't put yourself in an awkward situation. Don't put somebody else in an awkward situation. And then on the bias front, we need to be mindful of bias. this is maybe an after the contest thing, but before as well. There may be a group that you just really, really love, and you think every time I see them, I just think that they're a phenomenal group. That's something that doesn't need to enter into your judging practice. You're judging the show of the day. Historically, you might really like their shows, and this may be a show that you don't, or whatnot. It doesn't matter. You're judging the show of the day, and you cannot allow your bias to enter into or negatively impact your scoring.
Let me ask you a question. So let's evaluate this, and you tell me if this is considered an affiliation. I'm at an early season contest. It's an invitational, just in my region. A group that potentially is going to be at area. I give them a comment on recordings. Again, I don't talk to them directly. Then I do see them at area. Is that officially approved?
No, so so you're fine to do that with no problem. And the reason that we say that is you can receive judge files from the folks who are going to judge you at area. That's fine. Now, if they're going to come down to the field and clinic your students, if they are going to maybe even have like a director critique with you, and they're offering programming advice, we're now in that area where we have a problem. And so it's one of those things to be mindful of as you go through the season. We don't see a lot of the invitational contests in Texas doing critiques after the show, and that's good because it saves us from these problems. But I think if you have that file, I mean, I actually think that's highly advantageous that you have a file from somebody who you know you're going to see later. You can kind of see what are the things that they had concerns about. But it's once they're down in the field with your kids, it's once they're in a room with you doing a critique that we enter into that awkward space that I think we need to be mindful of. Lastly, let's talk about a little bit of just professionalism in social media. On the social media front, just be aware that any comment that you make on social media with respect to UIL, with respect to the participating groups, is going to be monitored. People will see it. Someone will send screenshots. Even if you're not friends with a whole lot of band directors, it will get seen. In the eyes of the community, when we go in to judge, we're working for UIL as far as they know. Now, you and I know that we're working for that area executive, those directors who have requested us, all of those things. But in reality, as a parent watching, as you talked about optics, as a parent, you work for UIL that day. And so if you're at the airport flying home, if you're having hotel breakfast the next morning, and you're sending out stuff, posting stuff to your social media, anything other than the my office for the day or a group shot. I mean, I love the judging panel group shots. Those are great. But if you say ABC High School is going to win state this year.
They knocked it out of the park.
That's not something that we can or should allow inside of this. But again, you can say my office for the day had a great time judging today in area M. You know, all good. Those are things that are 100% fine. But just kind of be mindful of naming a group. But also, too, like, be mindful of being critical of processes and procedures or things that went on. If it was a rough day, if there were weather delays, and maybe you felt like the weather delays weren't handled as well as they could have been or whatnot, you know what? Like, that is not something that you go onto social media about. There are opportunities if things were not run well, if there were concerns, you can give me some feedback, you can send feedback to the UIL office, you can talk with that area executive. There are lots of folks that you can talk with to try and help mitigate that from happening again in the future, but social media is not the place to air dirty laundry about other marching bands, or, you know, on positive or negative, or about the UIL process. If there are disagreements that you have or things you'd like to see changed, there are pathways for you to discuss those.
The old adage of if in doubt or when in doubt, don't. If there's any kind of doubt that someone could say, you know, that could be taken this way, probably best to just hold off on it. Even wait to post something. Sometimes we're all trying to be timely with something on social media, and if it can be said a week later and still have some kind of relevance, that may be better. But if you're in doubt, to say, you know what, it's better off that I just leave this off the table today.
Agreed. Last on the professionalism front is integrity. It should be clearly understood that we need to have mutual respect for the opinions of others and confidence in their ability to judge. So let me pause there for just a second to say, it's okay if I have a group in first and Mark has them in third. My read on them was one thing. I was talking over certain sections, and maybe just by the stroke of luck, all the moments I talked over were the worst moments of their show,
Right.
and all that Mark heard were the worst moments of their show, and he was speaking over the best moments.
Right.
It's okay for us to have two separate reads on a show. We respect one another's opinions on that. We're never going to call that into question in any sort of a public forum. Now, if you have concerns about judgment or conduct, there is a pathway for that. But again, it doesn't involve social media. It doesn't involve talking to the directors in that region. It involves that UIL area executive. It can involve me. It can involve Mark. Again, as I mentioned, Mike Howard assists on these with us. It can involve Dr. Kent, Gabe Musella, any of those folks who can help you if you have concerns about a judge and their ability to do that. Remember, with Competition Suite, we're monitoring things really closely. We can go in and listen to people's files. We can see scores as the day's taking shape. All of those things are being viewed, and we're making sure that everything appears above board, that everything looks exactly as UIL and the state want it to be. But inside of that process, if you have concerns, be sure that you're carefully, in the most, to use a school district term, the most HR way possible, that you're dealing with those things professionally. And, by the same, that you're also respectful of the fact that we could have differing opinions on a group. And based on our backgrounds and based on our read of the show, it's okay to differ a little bit.
Yeah, I agree totally. And that's why there's 5 judges, and there's 3 that evaluate music, and it gets that perspective. And it's almost like a overall arching theme. Potentially, these common things are being said within the individual comments, priorities along the way. It comes up with the ranking that we'll see that evening.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into the judging philosophy of the UIL area, really region area and state judging system. I'm going to apologize because these next few slides are kind of a little bit of me reading to you, but just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what does this overall judging system look like at, again, still a pretty, we're not maybe not 30,000 foot anymore, we're down to 10,000 foot view of everything. The achievement level as displayed by the performers at a contest shall be the sole basis for evaluation. Achievement results from the simultaneous considerations of content or responsibilities, the composition, and the extent to which the students perform them. Each judge needs to simultaneously consider what and how. And we're going to spend the next little while talking about the importance and listening to some exemplars of what and how. Each band makes a wide variety of choices. You choose your music. There's not a PML for marching band.
Right.
You chose your music. You chose that drill. You chose to have the tubas and drumline back up at a 6-5 at 160. Those were choices that were made. But the system encourages and rewards the bands that provide the public with a high sense of engagement and entertainment. The scoring system encourages and rewards innovation and artistry, while also a carefully balanced variety of all of these things. Now you're like, well, Jerry, you haven't talked about cleanliness yet, so let's get to that. The scoring system is there to provide tools for teaching with the goal of improving each program, but the proper use provides educational value. It allows these bands to project an identity, but also it ensures that every performer is worthy of that recognition and that dignity for their efforts. And so it's a combination for me of what compelling music, compelling visual ideas are you going to present that day, and then how well do the performers carry that out? Yes, how well did we teach it? How well did we design it? How well did we compose and or arrange that? All of that weighs into it. But then the other side of that is, did the students show that in that moment? Again, unlike concert and sight reading, we mentioned there's not a PML. We also don't get a copy of the scores. We also don't get a copy of the drill. We don't have their drill binder up there and say, oh, you just missed that, hash mark. Like, we're not getting into that. We're there to see this is what you've designed, and then we're reacting to the student's performance of that. And so that, I think, helps build the clarity for which Texas programs are known. So what kind of overarching on all that?
I love the evolution of our philosophy sheets, etc. Before this, it was challenging. I can remember specifically at a contest on the previous idea, it didn't credit the watt as much. I tried to make it work, and a lot of judges were in the same boat, trying to manipulate it, trying to make it happen where I'm going to split this hair, I'm going to split it again, because there was excellence at all level at this particular state contest. I was judging music. It didn't give the credit in what we have now, where the watt it becomes more important. It's the complexity, it's the idea. Wow, the range of this, the diversity, the variety. I could now quantify those things, and I could now see, okay, there are two big factors between this sports car and this sports car, even though they're both driven the exact same way. And I love that we have moved into that one. It is challenging because you're taking something that has some subjectivity to it, and then you're trying to make it objective. But I think it's more than welcome. We hear those buzzwords a lot of what and how, and it now gives us a place to quantify and able to put a place for them, a placeholder in place.
Absolutely. So, when you think about that what and how and balancing your commentary, which is what we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes, the intent of the bullet points that you see on the front of the sheet is providing an overview of what we're adjudicating inside of our caption. And that intent continues on the back with some questions. We should, as judges, refer and reflect on as many of those questions as possible during the process. Over time, and we talked about judging over time, one of those bullet points it's almost like the fonts could change. One of them becomes a little larger as you listen more and more, and it becomes a little bit more of an area of concern, whereas other bullet points minimize because you go, wow, they do that really, really well. Yes. So it gives you that opportunity for kind of things to stand out, but we want to be balanced throughout our commentary. And so in balancing, the cycle that we recommend is impression, analysis, comparison. You get an impression of a moment, you analyze what are you hearing, what are you seeing, whether you're judging music or visual, and then there's a comparison. That comparison is against the standard of always, sometimes, rarely, whatever that needs to be. And then inside of even those boxes, how was it consistently to what degree did it go inside of that box? And so that process looks like we understand. I'm going to go back to the region level for a second. At the region level, those judges understood ratings. They understood established paradigms. They gave that group earned, I should say, a first division rating. We move on to the area round, and we have this fresh set of eyes, fresh set of ears, and we're going impression. What's my impression? And for me, I go through that cycle multiple times in a show. There is an overarching, like a big impression of the group, a big analysis of the show, and a comparison at the end. But there are also these little small moments where a trumpet feature comes up. I see it coming forward. Okay, we're focusing on
impression. Yeah.
Right. I'm getting I analyze what I hear. I'm quiet. I listen. I take it in. And then in my comparison, I'm doing that verbal reflection for the kids inside of it.
Thinking of another idea, there's a pretty standard model that a lot of marching groups use where the opener is a little more upbeat, sometimes more visceral, but definitely has a lot more rhythmic responsibilities. And then the middle of the show is where the ballad starts. That is an impression. That's the first time in that particular format where I get to hear lyrical playing, and then I get to have that idea. So an impression isn't always, here's the first 30 seconds, and then from there on out, I'm going to keep that judgment. No, you're constantly having those firsts along the way. The first time a section's featured, a style is presented, or a dynamic contrast for that matter.
Yeah. So if you look on the screen, I'm going to put up what those 5 boxes look like. It's essential that at area and at state, to continue on, that we're achieving that uniform numerical treatment across the contest. So the performance and the conditions might vary over the course of the day. We talked about rain and wind, and sometimes it's 30 degrees when you start the day and it gets all the way up to 70, but we need to apply these numbers in the most uniform manner possible. This delineated scale of always, consistently, usually, sometimes, rarely, can also be divided into thirds. And you can see in that box, and we're going to talk a little bit about the divisions of thirds of the boxes in a while, but you can see those very clear divisions. Is it consistently bordering on always? Is it consistently but bordering on usually? And how that can help you determine your number inside of each of those sub-captions. This proper adjudication also requires a good understanding of paradigms, of what historically that looks like. The words we attach to these boxes really help with that. And so I'm going to offer you a little bit of a graphic here in a second, but this is in the Google Drive, and you can print and bring it to the judging gig. that has just some other words that you might use. Because if I say consistently after 8 hours, I'm tired of using that word. I want to expand into some, different vocabulary. But if we're able to match those descriptors with, I think it puts us in a really strong place.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You used the word paradigm. I guess probably your basic definition to share with our audience, but I think when he used the reference of maybe I'm a 5A or a 6A director and I'm judging a 3A contest, what does a strong group at this level look like? What does a group that's in box 4 and they're doing things most of the time, is that what you're referring to as what a paradigm is?
Yeah, I think it's not only what those historical norms look like and what our expectation is in terms of that, but it's also understanding the responsibilities of the students, because I think we've all taught or worked with at some point a group that has, for lack of a better term, Noah's Ark instrumentation,
yes.
2 on a part. Those student responsibilities are very different than student responsibilities when you have 24 clarinets.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you have 12 tubas. Like, that's a different world. And so I think that these norms apply by the very nature of the size of the ensemble as we begin to work through classifications. Students are presented with a variety of challenges. And that's not to say you couldn't see a 5A group in area that only has 60 wins.
Sure.
That's entirely possible that you could see that. And I think reacting to it is understanding the challenges that those students face and understanding that what consistently means for 2 on a part versus consistently for 24 on a part feels a little bit different. And so I think we always have to be mindful of the variables and the nuances that exist, not only classification to classification, but band size to band size is something to react to. In reality, too, you may find that there are 2 groups that are so close in a subcaption. When you compare let's say you have a background as a percussionist, 2 groups that percussion-wise, you're like, they could.
Right.
The difference is splitting hairs. If you need to tie a subcaption, it's okay. We would prefer that you not. We would prefer that you make a decision, but sometimes those differences are going to be 1 or 2 or 3 points. We're talking a little while with our full judging panel about some of those numbers management pieces and how to do that. But understand that just as you prepare for this as a new judge, there are going to be some groups that it's really hard to split hairs. And that's okay. Just know that that's going to own that reality before you walk into the gig. Understand, though, too, at the bottom of the sheet, we can't have a tie. So if you make that tie, the statistical likelihood that you'd see one later is higher. So just kind of be mindful of making decisions early will help prevent ties later. These decisions are critical. They require analysis. They require intentionality. They're not fun. It's not my favorite part of judging is when you have those 2 groups that are so close. Right. And I take good notes. I reflect on them. The good thing about Competition Suite, I can think about it over lunch, and I can just write down band ABC and band DEF. Gosh, I'm going to go sit at lunch quietly for a second and reflect on what I heard, and really am I married to that number? Do I feel like that's the number that I need to be at?
It's why you're hired to do this job, to make the tough decisions.
Yeah, not always the fun part of judging, but it's really important to those programs. So on the screen right now, you can see some what we call just other terms that you can use, or some scoring specific language under, I'll use box 4, and consistently I have words like assured and dependable and discerning and effective and refined and positive and sophisticated. This prevents you from getting stuck in just the one kind of title box descriptor, and gives you some open ones. Now, I don't mind calling him out because he'll be okay with it. George Little said to me, he goes, Jerry, there are some of these words I would not use in my... It's okay to make the version for you. Like, right. You can, if this is online, and you can just copy and paste it, and you can go, I would never use the word enchanting to describe. Great, right. But what would you use? Would you use the word awesome? Because I don't have the word awesome on here.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So it's okay for you to have like your set of vocabulary based around this too. So don't feel like you have to use this one. This is one that I think generally works. But I want to show you one other, and I don't know that Mark's had a chance to see this, but kind of more of a cloud here that starts in one place and lets you kind of branch out into some different ideas.
I've seen that also described as a balloon.
Yeah.
That concept.
Yeah, and so inside of this, you have the opportunity to just kind of branch out with some additional terms as we're exploring. So use either one, but also The source files for those are available to you. Customize it to the way you speak. We don't need 5 judges who sound the exact same and use all the same words. Well, you were chosen for that area requested you, or you were recommended to that area because you're going to do a great job for them. But use your voice. Don't feel like you need to use necessarily these words. So don't be afraid to customize your own little sheet with the words you like. There are a couple that we steer clear of. I think I'm going to speak for both of us on this, but like the word nice is one I steer clear of, because I don't, like if you walk in and be like,
vague,
nice, honey, how do I look? Nice.
It sounds pretty snarky when you say it that way.
Yeah, it just doesn't always come off the way that you want it to. And I'm going to tell you, there's an exemplar today. It's a good one. And the individual does use nice a few times. And you'll hear even words like good and that, like, I think you want to just offer maybe words that just have a little more precision to them. Musical terms are great, when you can offer those. So just kind of think through that. And we're going to dive into some exemplars here in just a minute, and you'll get to check those out. So
having that sheet has helped me. I also had many judges that would say, boy, that was gold, having that with me. So talking about what to have in your bag with you, that having that sheet of paper, whether it gets that brain fog where you're looking for something, or maybe you're a little frustrated, or maybe it's just the length of the day, having those is kind of a refresher where while you're watching the group and you actually have a notebook in front of you, you can look down at those. Sometimes that helps say, that's the word. That's exactly what I was looking for. But that would be definitely something physical to have with you.
Yeah. At this point, we're going to pause and we're going to have you take quiz number 1. There's going to be a QR code linked on the screen. If you have a second device with you and can click on that QR code, that's great. If not, look down in the comment section below and there's a link for you to take it. You can just click on that link and it will take you to the quiz. Good luck on quiz number 1, and we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. So we're now going to dive into specific sheets, and we're going to start with area music. We're going to talk about this area music sheet. It is also worth mentioning that in the 1A, 2A, and 3A classes, this is also the music sheet that's utilized at state, so if that kind of helps you. Every sheet, as I mentioned earlier, has a front and a back that line up pretty exactly, as you can kind of see on this image, and these are available in that Google Drive. They're also on the UIL website for you to see, but we're going to zoom in and talk through each box. Then we're going to listen to some exemplars of folks who are doing a wonderful job judging. So let's start with the ensemble performance box. The top box is 250 points, and it deals with, I'll just read them down to you: phrasing and artistic expression, blend and balance, precision and timing, dynamic contrast, style and articulation, and effective use of electronics when present. So those are the 250 points you have to devote to those. I'm going to put you on the spot on this one. When you're diving into starting a performance and enjoying the ensemble experience from the press box, what are some of the things that you begin to do early in the show? How does your kind of viewpoint change as the show goes on?
Sure. To preface this, I think everyone's aware, but the terminology in the region sheet, the area sheet, progressing to the state sheet, it uses the same topics. Now it's a dynamic of a couple of people where you get to really just kind of sit and listen. It's the exact same terminology, so I think the committee did a great job putting that together. To answer your question, I think through some objectives, as I did as a teacher. I'm focusing a lot on the impression. Where are we from the balance? Where are we from precision? I'm listening to uniformity of articulation. I'm trying to think through things that really stand out, and that can't just be, oh no, that wasn't together, or that's a weird balance. But it's like, wow, they sound really well trained on articulation, and it's something that catches my eye. So I start with those benchmarks. Not excluding dynamics, but I'm thinking through the craft of what's happening in addition to the artistic part of it. But I think it has to be where the craft really kind of drives, and that's the nucleus of I'm thinking about how well trained is this ensemble now.
Absolutely. And I think inside of that too, you're beginning to kind of, and I think I have a graphic maybe later in the presentation, you're looking at that number line and you're going blend and balance, pretty consistent. You know, as I get to the end of the opener, I'm in the middle of consistently. There have been a couple moments, some stick outs here or there, some things that maybe, you know, didn't quite set the way you wanted it to. But for the most part, it's sitting inside of that, and I think like that's what helps us feel grounded in our decision making there. And it also, as I said earlier, they're like as if the font could swell. You know, there are some that maybe the style piece, you're like, oh, we are not approaching, you know, note endings the same when we play staccato. So if you look at the questions underneath on the back, they just basically take those same descriptors and phrase them as a question. I'll just do one of them. To what degree do the performers demonstrate, right? This is a performance analysis moment here. To what degree do the performers demonstrate phrasing and artistic expression that is of the highest musical value? If the answer to that question is always, they always demonstrate phrasing and artistic, then fine. If it's consistently, you know, if it's usually it's of the highest musical value. So just know that the answer to the question begets the score, and it's a very simple kind of XY equation that you're working through.
I think that we've talked about this numerous times, especially the back of the sheet almost drives the part of it. It for me, in a literal sense, I actually have the back of the sheet turned up where I'm looking at those questions. You're talking about terms that pop off the page. I see certain questions that all of a sudden become a lot more glaring to me. Like, wow, that captures the essence of what I'm talking about right now. There's other parts of it where I'm evaluating where they are in the grand scale of it, but I am finding something where that's a common theme where they are usually or they are consistently hitting the this box area over and over and over, looking at those key questions.
Absolutely. And so when we move into the woodwind box and the brass box, they're very similar. They're copy pastes of each other. There's a little difference in the percussion one, but even it is very similar. They only have 4 descriptors. Under woodwind performance, so again, just thinking about the woodwind section, thinking about just the flutes, just the clarinets, thinking even further about just the individuals in those sections. Tone quality, intonation, technique and accuracy, blend and balance. Right? And there's 200 points devoted to woodwinds, 200 to brass, 200 to percussion that can help you kind of whittle down exactly where you want to be inside of those. So again, let's take another question from it. To what extent, and I really like the way that we ended up as a committee when we phrase these, do the performers demonstrate? Not do you think the performers could do on their best day? Not, this is what ability do they demonstrate? Show of the day, blend and balance that is clear and appropriate throughout the presentation. And then from there, you can assess the woodwind number. How often is the woodwind number the same as the brass number? For me, very seldom. You know, I find that there are ensembles where the woodwinds are not only from a, and we'll talk about content in a little while, not only from a content perspective, they're treated in a way that showcases them, but also every time they step up, you're constantly impressed by what's going on woodwind wise. And then there are other ensembles where it's brass or it's percussion, but there's gonna be, generally speaking, a caption leader with nearly every group that you see. Something is going to stand out very positively to you.
Let me ask you a question as your experience as a judge. Many shows are put together where they're brass and battery driven. And we're talking about samplings of how many times something becomes, like a woodwind part can obviously live with an entire ensemble, like right here, the woodwind color. True, obvious moments. The front ensemble is another part of it, where it's the front ensemble and the woodwinds, where you maybe have limited exposure opportunities. How do you do that? Like wow, I really can only think of 2 big moments where the front ensemble kind of did something in that one. How do you handle those?
But I think you have to listen through the colors. And my idea, and I'll put on the band director hat for a second, if I see it, I want to hear it. Does that mean it's the primary? No. I mean, when I hear a Sousa march, I can hear the counter melody. I can hear the motor. I can hear the French horns playing upbeats. All of those things are obvious to me. I want to make sure that it has a role inside of the sonic space. That role is not always primary.
Right.
I use the analogy often with like the idea of like people on a stage. Right, if we have a cast of actors, and our actors are, we'll just name them flute and clarinet, there will be a moment where the flute, the clarinet, and the saxophone come to the front of the stage to sing a trio to you during the musical, and the brass and the percussion folks are all back here. They're still singing along. They're in the chorus. They're a part of that. They're choreographed. All of those things are happening. And then there's a moment where they come forward. There may be a moment in the show where the whole cast comes to the very front of the stage and presents something. There may be a moment where the cast disappears and only one person is left on stage. And so as we think our way through that, when we talk about variety, which we addressed earlier, our aim is to ensure that you get as many looks as possible. And to your point, if it's very brass and percussion heavy, that we have to have moments for front ensemble. We have to have moments for the woodwind section. We have to create those moments, and we have to be sure that from a transparency perspective, which kind of as a function of blend and balance is coming through, is being heard. We are by definition, unlike another, kind of, we're not solely focused on performance, we're focused on education.
Yes.
And if we're focused on education, then that means educating all of the students.
Everyone has value on the field.
Right. Not saying like, oh, you flutes, y'all just march around back there and keep the flutes parallel. There's more to it than that. As we shift into the brass sheet, copy paste, tone, intonation, technique and accuracy, blend and balance. As Mark said, you're gonna likely find that the brass exposures are a little higher. I think you're gonna see and hear the brass a little bit more because it's marching band. It's what the genre is.
Right.
But I also feel like, just like with anything, let's put on kind of our teacher mindset for a second. If you're giving a test to your students and there's like 2 main areas that you're focused on or 3 main areas you're focused on, you may ask a couple of really important questions about woodwind. And they get those 3 or 4 really big exposures, and they have to be great because they don't have as many.
Yeah.
Right. The brass may have 6 or 8 exposures, but as with 6 or 8 questions, the likelihood that you might get one of those wrong, as opposed, whenever we do this, I think that we as directors make choices about the shows that we program to ensure that we're giving adjudicators and audience members not only entertainment engagement, but also that we're showcasing our students in the most positive light possible.
Sure.
The percussion sheet, or the percussion box, is close. Obviously, we took the intonation piece off of there because beyond timpani, I don't really know who we would speak to, but it talks about quality, precision and timing, technique and accuracy, blend and balance. And so inside of here, we're listening carefully for what is the quality of sound that we're getting from the percussion section, the precision and timing, their technique, their accuracy on technique. So maybe a little more kind of percussion ensemble to percussion individual, and then their blend and balance and their role inside of the blend and balance. And I know one of the things we hear often is, UIL's coming up. Tell your percussion to
tell your percussion to play half as loud, yeah.
I think just like the other voices we were talking about, there need to be really clearly delineated moments where percussion is featured. But just like the actors on a stage, the percussion can't stand on the front of the stage the whole show. There have to be moments where they show that variety, they show that depth, where they can go backstage, they can switch to a different implement. We can just hear the bass drums accompanying the low brass. That those moments are possible. I don't know, what are your thoughts just on the percussion piece locking into?
Kind of backing up to our very top box of ensemble performance, it's not the winds and the percussion, but really they are part of the ensemble, and we would address that, or we see that in compositions. Kind of a mixed use of this term, but the concept of a through composed score, where the percussion book is composed at the same time. It's not obvious it's been added on, or like in spite of what the winds are doing, the percussion are going to play this, but it all fits together. And I think you crediting the groups are like, this is very complimentary. Like what Jerry said, it doesn't have to be the full ensemble playing all the time. Noticing, oh, that was just the tenors and the basses playing this moment as it supported the mid voices.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, that has been really well thought out, and that's you noticing that in the what. And recognizing that you didn't use all the crayons in the box at the same time. You chose certain ones, just like you would with a woodwind color or brass color, but to get that ensemble part. We always gravitate to the balance, but again, how's their articulation? How is their timing? How is their style? How is their uniformity? Just like we would with any other musical instrument.
Yeah. And I think, too, don't be afraid if your background is not percussion, right? Neither of us have a background as percussionists. Feel comfortable diving into talking about precision and timing and balance and blend. Like, all of those things, as you said, it's another musical instrument. You may not be able to use the fancy, patata terms and all of the, it's fine. It's okay. You know what? When we get to the visual front, there are many of us who maybe don't feel comfortable with all the French dance terms being utilized in the color guard world. That doesn't mean that, just because I can't speak the deepest levels of the lingo. No, you can absolutely dive into talking about what you hear and what your impression is of it, even if you can't speak to those expert, levels. As adjudicators, we want everyone's input on this, because that's really critical. So we have, with that, 4 different exemplars we're going to listen to. Mark and I are going to listen to them with you, and then we're going to react to them and just kind of talk through it.
Yeah, again, just a couple of trumpet players trying to be heroes. That's not necessary, man. All you need to do is play well. You don't need to play loud. And as you crescendo, you have to listen around, stay in your trio. Some nice low voices right there. Good for you. Great sax sound. Really pretty. A little more vibrato there on the long note as we conclude that phrase. Just add that little bit of warmth with vibrato. Yeah, that interesting synth sound is back again. It just makes me want to know more. Great piano sound. Yeah, good for you. Boy, this is really, really beautiful. Really nice accompaniment here in the vibes, piano, saxes. Boy, you guys sound just great. Very musical. I love the shaping that we're getting from the front ensemble. Yeah, and as we're adding additional voices here in the front ensemble, the colors sort of dovetail together. It's just, it's very musical. It's very pretty. Yeah, real powerful, real emotional. Nicely done. I'd add a little bit of choreography here, perhaps, in the woodwind section. Yeah, and again, a little more flute color would be really nice from that from that woodwind choir. Some nice sounds that we're getting. These balanced, sonorous sounds that we're getting from the brass section, I think are just outstanding. Good for you. Careful, trumpet. Really nice battery. Well done. Yeah, and just a little bit of brightness, a little bit of tension there in the trumpet sound as we played really strong. Try to stay relaxed. Nice. Yeah. Really like the change of color. Visually, it adds to the impact of the musical texture.
Getting to hear J.D. Yonda's recording, he did a wonderful job. Some things that really stand out to me as positive attributes. His pacing was really good. You notice he didn't fill airtime. He really would listen. He would soak it in, make something. You could tell he was a fan. He was a fan of the program. He loved areas. He gave constructive ideas. Like it'd be great to hear some more flute sound in that in the balance. You could tell comments where he was addressing a balance. He was talking about the artistry. He was talking about dynamic swells, recognizing them. So again, it was the what, and then to what degree. Trying to find descriptive words. Traveled around the ensemble because he was addressing the woodwinds, he was addressing the brass, addressing the percussion, and you could tell he was getting every student on the field credit and value.
Yeah, I mean, it's about a 2-minute clip, so figure that's about a fourth of what he offered that day. And if you offer, I mean, he had at least 2 brass comments, 2 woodwind, 2 front ensemble, maybe only 1 battery, 1 electronics comment, but like if that's only 1/4, and assuming, you know, we were kind of more in the ballad production a little bit anyway, what that well-roundedness could look like, you would feel valued as a student performer that you were seen and heard that day. You'd feel that your efforts as a director to ensure that your staff had taught everything, that your student leaders were doing their jobs because everybody had a comment in there. The thing that stands out to me and why I pulled this as an exemplar too is he doesn't just go what and how, but a couple of times he gets a little bit into the why, and whereas his teacher had about be sure about your embouchure here, think about your listening environment, all of these things. And I think that for ensembles that are performing at a high level like this one is, it really helps you as a student to hear that from a judge, because chances are those are words that you've heard before from your band director.
Yes.
You've heard you need to open your ears here and don't close off and don't tighten up and don't all of these things. And so reinforcing that through the teaching, and as Mark said, his pacing is so good that it flows really, really well. So great work by JD. And let's jump into our next exemplar. This one's going to be Van Matthews.
Yeah, trombones. I think it's trombones. Side 1, a little out of the texture on the glissando effect, previous phrase and a half. Nice front of the note, a little more follow through. Dee, do, do. Yeah, there's a sameness to all of those interjections. Do, we could grow. Do, 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 and give it more direction and life and personality there. Continue to work on the weight of the unison octave dotted 8/16. Yeah, that's a tough one to navigate, the unison octaves. Continue to work for clarity and balance within the octave of all the voices inherent in it. It's really loud keyboards. Yeah, so your trumpet solo, there's so many elements that have been amplified. I'm not against amplification, but I'm looking for a relationship between the acoustic nature of the instruments and the amplified natures. If that trumpet player is not being picked up, then it's a little bit underplayed by comparison. Interesting with the mashup of the themes here. I believe woodwinds were in unison octave. Keep balancing that to the lowest octave on the Beethoven theme.
So in Van's, I think what impresses me the most is his ability to be very nuanced with his commentary. I feel like I can see the score printed on the page in front of him. He's talking unison octaves and dotted 8/16. Yeah. Like you can see his thought process when you talk about, and for directors who say, sometimes I hear from judges who say, I'm not sure about how do I talk about the what. I mean, in Van's case, I see the score lifting up off the page and he's talking about it, but I also like that he gets into the artistry. We're going to talk later on with our returning judges about the idea of judging from a classical perspective and judging from a more romantic perspective. Van's got all the classical stuff there, but he's also talking about your use of vibrato here, your personality to come through and all of these things. It's like, I love that we're offering not only how to continue to refine the technical aspects, but also those extra musical things, those very same things that you would say to your concert ensembles are coming through here in this area file that Van made. What else impressed you on that?
You can tell Van is a true pedagogue. He is teaching this like he understands. D da D da D. He's singing along with you like I'm in the ensemble and I'm trying to relate to what you're using. Comparison, giving them credit for it in addition to areas that maybe were more hazy than the other ones. I liked his comment a lot about how he addressed the amplification, and it was something where he didn't. He immediately said keyboards. That's really loud right there. What he talked about though was in relationship to the trumpet solo. The word that came to my mind was. It made the trumpet solo be underwhelming, where the trumpet player is playing something really well. He's addressing balance according to the sheet, how it all fits together, and something like you said before, the supporting cast members are way too dominant because of the amplification or because of something being overly on the hot side, and the trumpet players doing their job. Can we find the most supportive environment? Could have been that stadium. It could have been one setting that they've been using. It could have been today was hotter, today was cooler, and again, it's a live, organic, fluid moment because we are judging that in time. But I thought it was really great that he addressed that more than just saying that's too hot. He is saying the why.
Right. Yeah. You're getting that what and how. And these exemplars, these are all really, really great judges. But you're getting what, you're getting how, and then you're getting even a why and what you could do to fix that. Assuming and again, I don't remember if this is a prelims or a finals, but this was a prelims thing to be like, hey,
fix that.
Yeah, I mean that front ensemble balance thing that could get fixed in the parking lot just with somebody touching the board and going like front ensemble down, trumpet up. It may be a guess in the parking lot, but it's going to be a better guess than what we offered in a prelim setting. So. We're going to move on to the next. The elder statesman here, Mr. Randy Vaughn, is going to take us into this next file. But I'm going to set this one up a little bit by saying what I appreciate so much about Mr. Vaughn's commentary here is how he is a fan of this group, and I love his enthusiasm for it, and I think that he calls out the things that don't go well. Don't get me wrong, but you have no doubt at the end of this file that he's a fan of the kids and their efforts, and I think if you know him personally, this is how he is.
He is,
and so it just comes through. So let's check out Mr. Vaughn's file on this next group.
Yeah, I appreciate the dynamics there. Very well controlled on the loud end and the soft end with good sound, good supported sounds at both ends of the dynamic spectrum. Good for you. Excellent percussion. Wow, fabulous. Love the clarity, tone quality in the brass there. Good timing on from the woodwinds down to the brass and percussion. Good for you, woodwinds. Really clear and in tune and balanced. What I like is I can hear all the textures in there, woodwinds. Really good. Good clarity in the trumpet articulation. Good job, snares. Appreciate the menu window. Yeah. Really excellent balance with the wind players and their own field percussion. Front ensemble. Obviously excellent technique. Well played. Yeah, right there is the first time I've heard a little change in the sound on the visuals. Dud-it, dud-it, dud-it. Yeah, the second one was a little weak sounding. It could be just where your horns angles were pointing and not right at me is the reason maybe it lost energy or something. But anyway, still very, very good.
With Randy's comments, no one could ever accuse him of talking over anyone. He has found this really, it's this theme again we keep hearing from these exemplars where they're letting the music come to them and letting the show come to them and being able to let the performers perform, but you are like, yep, he's right there with us. He's addressing areas. You can tell the areas that he's fans of, and then I loved how he you could tell he was thinking. He was pausing. He could, that's the first instance I've heard where this, and he actually kind of gave a possible condition of why that's happening. That's probably this, and it's our job to fix somebody's show, but understanding, okay, that is something that happened a certain way. That could be something we fix between prelims and finals. That could be something that's a underlying issue of a neighborhood of a group. Recognizes the ensemble. He talks about he didn't say the word transparency, but he talked about the clarity the ensemble was going, where I'm thinking, wow, what a great positive attribute that you're leading to us, that we're able to hear all the voices, most of the voices when we get to whether it be a chord or an articulation.
And I think too, I feel like he could be the band director of this group, and I wouldn't know, because it seems like he just knows the show so well, because like you said, he's right there with them, and he's getting drawn to the focuses and just kind of staying with them on all those. He's calling out the things that are, and even the way that he calls out the da-da-da-da-da, he doesn't really get after too bad, just to say, I mean, it's a fact. I don't think there'd be a kid in the band who wasn't like, yeah, that didn't line up for us today in prelims, but we're gonna get it in finals, we're gonna come back to it. And so, I think just that succinctness of all the exemplars we've heard so far, he's probably the most succinct at saying the most with as few words as possible. But I think it also, as Mark says, it allows him to take on the most music and really feel like he's right there with you on the field.
I think he's an experienced judge and a veteran musician. For anyone that's really kind of on the beginning levels of their judging, you can tell he is very focused and concentrating a lot. And I think that's something you should take away, where you can't let your mind wander, where you are literally just studying and you're constantly coming back around to these different areas while you're looking at the group. You're just listening critically rather than passively.
Absolutely. We have one more music exemplar to share with you. This is Chip Krotz, and he's from Georgia Tech. This is him doing music ensemble at State. So we're getting out of the area thing a little bit, but I just wanted you to hear one more approach that's a little bit different that I think you'll enjoy. So with that, here's Chip Krotz.
Good, nice sense of shape. Maybe get a little bit more sense of expression, battery, the initial statement. D, nice sense of articulation, 2D brass. Mellophones will stay on top of the tempo as we crescendo through your phrase. We can get just a better sense of contribution all the way through the depth of the phrase to the end. Good sense of energy, quality. Make sure we're just matching resonance side to side. That consistency, brass voice, a mellophone. Excellent listening, detailing down. Good full blend 2D ensemble. Woodwinds, make sure as we come back up, we're really maximizing your dynamic to stay up with that brass intensity as long as possible. Good sense of articulation, style, brass voices. Just a little bit side to side in terms of slowing down the length as we get farther outside of that pocket with percussion. Make sure we're listening back. Percussion, we can still do more on those top dynamics with brass and woodwinds, really matching that intensity level. Ooh, appreciate the challenging technique. Just that tendency of wanting to just push on the front of the tempo at those upper dynamic moments. Keep those nice and light. Stay back in the time. Beautiful color. Excellent technique through the quartet. They continue to make that sense of musicality and shape through the technical lines, the scalar passages. Yeah, we get a little bit better sense of articulation here. Low brass voices, matching high. And again, through the 2D woodwinds, given that opportunity just in terms of getting more out of the upper woodwind voice through the tenor. D. Good sense of expression. Make sure as we decrescendo, we maintain tempo front ensemble to battery. I'm keeping working that sense of expression. Really intricate. Love the sense of phrasing through here. Boom, boom, dee. Yeah, match that sense of nuancing here. Da 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 dee da da da. Just a tendency to push and pull rhythmically through the top dynamic into the phrase dee da da.
I could listen to Chip all day as a judge. Not only is he entertaining, but truly inspirational for something I try to aspire. I talk to this with many teachers about outstanding or extraordinary traits that all teachers have, and one of those is a sense of theater. And that term, I think about his voice inflection. So not even talking about the nuts and bolts yet, him showing excitement, showing inflection, almost speaking in a crescendo, decrescendo comment. If you're wired that way, that's great. I have to work towards that a lot, so it doesn't come across as just monodynamic. But that really, you can tell, is like he is genuinely excited about this. Now, going back to the content part of it, I love the parallels he would draw, not only with this particular thing in showing the art of expression. It wasn't a broad paint stroke. It was woodwinds. You need to maximize your crescendo. I hear you're crescendoing, but right there we needed more from you, not just saying, hey, everybody needs to crescendo. Or percussion, you need to maximize the same type of thing. Your decrescendo has to be this same exaggeration level as the brass section.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and
huge.
intentional relationships between musical moments taking place. So not only are you, in doing so, you're hearing woodwind, you're hearing brass, you're hearing percussion, but also that there's an intentional aim to have you hear something above something else, and kind of was that coming through based on the range, based on the tessitura, based on the drill. You know, he does consider the environment a couple of times, and we're going to talk about that as we get in with our experienced judges a little bit more. But you know, he's talking about environment in a couple of places, and like, well, I recognize you're back here and you're there, and understanding what challenges the performers are facing, because that does influence the content piece of things. And so, you know, with that, I hope that it's giving you an understanding of some of these exemplars and giving you something to listen to and digest. If this has been helpful in that Google Drive, I think it's up to about 3 hours of area exemplars. Like, there's more than you would ever want to digest. But go ahead and check some of them out. There are some state ones on the area side, because like I said, that 1A through 3A uses the same sheets.
Yes.
So a couple times I borrow some state ones. In fact, on the visual side, we're going to hear one of those. It's a state one, but in the 2A class. And so inside of there, just the opportunities to delve into the listening of, as Mark said, record yourself reacting to YouTube, and then maybe listen to one of these. In fact, if you really want to go for advanced placement credit, it says in the exemplar what bands they are and what shows they are.
Yeah.
If it was somebody talking to the ABC high school band in state prelims and you're able to pull that video, imagine you going through it and then listening to them going through it and be like, wow, we caught a lot of the same things. I feel good. Oh, I noticed they talked more to percussion than I did. I noticed that they did these things. So there are learning opportunities and just opportunities for continued development as much as you like. Before we wrap up the area music chapter with you for our new judges, I do want to talk about electronics for a moment. So Mark kind of started to tee this up earlier, and I was like, I'm gonna bring it back when we get to this section, which is, we were talking about the analogy of a stage play, where there are individuals who come to the front of the stage and they sing to us. Maybe it's the woodwind section, as it were, the brass section, the percussion, what have you. Electronics helps flatten where the front of the stage is, if that makes sense. In other words, you could be anywhere in the house, and with electronics, you could be on the front of the stage.
Yeah, you're the forefront.
Volume-wise, right? You could be at the very back of the house, just a single spotlight on you, and you could be louder than everything else going on stage. And so, when we talk about electronics and the use of electronics, we're talking about two things here. Number one, on the creative side, we're talking about just how electronics are used as a primary, as a secondary, and as a motor or kind of effect moment underneath, as an underpinning. So there's like kind of the creative side, and I think you heard in Mr. Vaughn's earlier, he was talking about how much he liked the piano sound. In JD Yonda's, he said something about, there's that interesting synth sound. Maybe those kinds of opportunities for us to comment on the creative use of and how it reinforces. But then the other piece of it, and probably the one that stands out the most, is one that we heard about where some of the relationships are not quite right. And we know that with electronics, just like with our full ensemble, our bands sound different. Again, let's use a concert and sight reading analogy. We go to a certain stage for concert and sight reading and we sound different. Or if a group's recording for honor band, they're going to go to a big fancy performance hall to try and get the very best recording that you can. These stadiums, some of them are acoustically incredibly friendly.
Some are more reverb.
Some of them are concrete bowls. Some of them are bass traps is the term we use, where like any bit of bass really gets magnified for you. And so what I want you to think about when you're talking about electronics is, yes, there's the creative side of it, and certainly we can address that and the role of those musicians who are performing the electronic instruments. But also there's the relationship piece. It's not necessarily something to dwell on, but if you feel that that relationship has an imbalance in it, either too much or too little, often it will be too much. If you're hearing that, to react to it succinctly and just say, this is out of balance for me, this relationship is not right between the melody and the supporting elements in the electronics, and then we move on from there. But it is important that we are adjudicating the role and the musical role that the electronics play in supporting the show and its content, but also adjudicating the moments where it perhaps falls short or distracts.
To piggyback on that, I want to challenge our judges this year. Your addressing electronics needs to be a much deeper level, dig deeper, and not just volume related, amplification related. But again, like you alluded to, the musical score, the colors, that their value on the field, not only value in the students, but wow, I see in the score you created this really cool women's vocal choir sound that supports this. Address that, and then how it's supportive and it created a great nuance along the way. Try to dig way deeper than just electronics are too loud. I don't hear the electronics here, but really their value on the musical score.
Yeah, I think it's so critical too that we're respecting the fact that those are 2 or 3 or maybe just one musician in the ensemble, but that is a musician who has a very powerful single finger, that can absolutely really change the shape and the sound of the ensemble. And so just understanding that it is a reality of modern day marching band, and it's our role to adjudicate beyond just too loud, too soft, as Mark said, but just what is the shaping, what is the line, what is the nuance, what is the use and the creativity involved. And so with that, we're going to pause for our second quiz of the day for our new judges. There's going to be 3 quizzes on the new judge front. This quiz is focused on the area music sheet. So I want to wish you the best of luck, and we'll be right back with you when you finish this quiz. All right, we're back. We're going to focus on the area visual sheet next. So most of you will be judging music in prelims and visual in finals, or vice versa. There is one panelist who stays on music the whole time. Generally speaking, those are some of our more experienced judges. So as a newer judge, you can pretty much be assured that you're going to be judging both of these sheets over the course of that day. And those judging assignments will be available as we get a little bit closer to area weekends. Again, on the UIL's website, you can find the front and back of the sheet, and we're going to really focus on the top 2 boxes. I mentioned earlier, we have a unit for all judges on content, music and visual, that we're going to be sharing with you in the second portion of today. So that's why if you're like, wait, Jerry, you forgot about the music content box, you forgot about we're going to dive into that a little bit more deeply as we kind of just sew up the sheets with all judges. But let's talk about the visual sheet is divided into 2 sections prior to content, and that's going to be individual and ensemble. On the individual movement front, we start with what I call the trio of control of form and interval, control of body, and control of equipment, right? Those control factors are what you're going to spend a fairly large amount of time talking about on the individual front. Then we have precision and timing, demonstration of individual style, poise, presence, communication, and recovery. So we're thinking through, again, to pick a question just like we did on the other, to what degree do the performers demonstrate, notice, same wording, a refined sense of rhythmic precision and timing with regard to movement, right? And from there you can talk about training and how they approach body line, how they approach their roll step, things of that nature. Anything you want to say about the individual movement side?
Yes. This could be an area where we talked about in the very beginning, there's no one style from the state of Texas. This could be an area where maybe your group doesn't move quite as much in the contemporary movement way, and learning how to evaluate it, again, learning basic terms or what the type of movement, hey, that sidestep you're doing there as opposed to a sachet, learning how that happens, but to what degree, whether, or moving in a military way. Like, hey, this right here on this about haste, again, it could be a style maybe your group doesn't do or didn't do as you're teaching, but being well versed, crediting all, not saying I'll be dismissive, I don't know that one, so I'm not going to give any points or as many points as I could, but embracing what everyone is saying, here is what we're choosing to do, and to what degree are we doing it.
Well, and if you remember, this used to be called marching, and it changed to movement with our committee, several years ago. And part of that is that a group may choose to be a bit of a chameleon. They may choose to march in one style, and they may get to let's say, a ballad or a slower production, and you might see something that's more of leading with a tendu, leading with a toe. You may see something that's got a little bit more flutter and free form to it. And I think our openness as judges to take on whatever you want to offer us. It doesn't need to be that same approach the whole way that, like, well, we started with straight leg and lead with the heel, and I have to see that for all 8 minutes. No, absolutely. There can be just like there's a variety of articulation, there can be a variety of ways that we articulate the foot that can showcase that, but it still needs to be uniform. It still needs to be consistent. We can still look at all the flutes who are supposed to be doing that and say, there's a difference between the way these individuals are handling these responsibilities, their control of their body, versus the way this group is doing it.
The example you gave is great. If someone has chosen a larger vocabulary, traditional all the way through another evolution, awesome. Again, are they trained? Do they look the same? And the potential is strong, but again, it comes down to the excellence.
Absolutely. Now, when we move to the ensemble box, we talk about, again, I'll read them to you, achievement of form and interval, precision and timing, uniformity of style, professionalism, and recovery. So here we're talking about how the whole woodwind section moves as a group, the brass section, the battery, the color guard moves as a group, but we're also talking about how well do they achieve the things that are being asked of them by the content. Are they achieving the intervals that you're expecting them to see? Are they able to find cover downs? I mean, these things that we know are simple, but are actually not that simple, find their way into this box. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, and I'm going to back up for a second. The individual one is 300 points. The ensemble is 400 points. So greater value to the ensemble movement piece than the individual one. What about ensemble movement? Kind of where do you focus there?
Sure. Probably start with a question for you. We address musically, which I think many judges kind of gravitate towards. Something is out of time or out of tune, and we do the circle back approach. Do you ever find yourself, or do you try to avoid, where there's a problem with an interval in the form, and then your eyes keep being drawn to the same section, the same group or two people, and then how do you avoid it? How do you recognize it, but then move ahead to the rest of the
and to your point, like, there are going to be spots that are going to draw your attention. It's just like this black tablecloth. If there were just like a single white speck on it, it would draw your attention. Even if I moved it over a little bit, it would still draw our attention there. And so I think as we make our way through that process of understanding what we're watching, I do tend to notice, is it the same individual and or pod of individuals where those errors are happening? Because that trickles into that individual thing. Whereas if it's something that's in the ensemble, it was in the trombones the last time, now it's over here in the flutes, now it's in the battery, now it's in the color guard, then I think that it's more of an ensemble issue and more of a depth of training issue. And how do we train students? Are we, and this is kind of a deeper discussion that I don't know that I could get into in a file with a group, but, are we trying to dress to the form? Are we trying to hit the dot? Do we have some individuals who are doing one and some individuals who are doing the other? That could maybe be part of my wrap up. If I were seeing some issues where it was sporadic, but it seemed to ping different areas at different times. You know, you have always the issue of the kid who's absent, the kid who's ineligible, and now there's this hole in the field, and are we keeping that? Are we closing that? And you know, there are those things like, as a band director first, judge second, that you're going to have to make a call on as far as how you reflect on that and how you talk about that in with regard to the ensemble movement piece. And so maybe it's a good time to jump into a couple. We have 3 more exemplars to share with you here in this. We're going to open up with Steve Wessels. And inside of this group, I just want you to notice how quickly he's reacting to things visually. And it's going to be kind of a subchapter here on this when we talk about color guard. But I really want you to notice some of the things said in reference to just getting around to seeing and hearing a little bit from everybody here.
Yeah, seen some really good exhibitions of dance, staying in completely character. The movement, full range of motion from your head through your upper body, torso, color guard, fantastic. All right. Battery, watching you first. Nice, holding space well on the move there, basis. Minor space front to back there, low, base 4. Yeah, you're fixing it on the move, great. Feet timing just a little bit phased in the woodwinds as you go across the field. Upper body looks great. Good upper body control. Just find 1 or 2 students to trumpet right now on the 40 right side, basically facing almost to the end zone, you know, just at least at a 90 degree to the wrong place. Get that, the center of your body, sternum, just get it front, man. The better the band is at these skill sets, the more little tiny things stick out. So feet phasing, make sure you release the toe earlier, the back toe. If that back toe stays on the ground, then something in your leg's moving. It's your knee. So now you got a leg shape problem. And then that foot's behind everybody else's foot. You might be feeling just the downbeat. And I'm seeing that over here on the left side as well. If you, it looks like clarinet over there on the 20 now. Just leg shape, the biggest comment right now, although it's good from the majority. Nice pin tosses and the flags. Way to go, rifles. Nice. Spacing in the sousaphone's not real sure if that's you're wanting to be that far apart. Yeah, there's quite a big hole, especially on the left side of the sousaphone line. And then you're getting there late. Sousaphone, make sure you're adjusting. Look for visual clues on the field, hash marks, anything that gets you halfway across the field if you're not real sure where the person on the left or right is. All right, good body there. Looking down front again. And slides, clarinet on the outside the 40. Yeah, that slide, you're pretty much allowing your shoulders, the sternum to go to the other side, facing the drum major. Looking more in the slides. Yeah. Majority good. Lower body control's good, except where I mentioned just some individuals that randomly at different times. Upper body slides. It's so obvious with your uniform again. I really love the uniform. I think it's cool, but you have to pull that hip around more. It's not just the shoulder. That's what we see, but as a marcher, you got to pull that hip around. That's where most of you're going to get the upper body, the sternum, and especially so the upper body is more relaxed and you feel good as you're moving and breathing well and all that. Fantastic show. Congratulations again for being in finals. I wish the best to you for the rest of your school year.
Commenting on Steve's his evaluation, I liked the sampling. I could almost tell he was making it around the field as he was talking about the percussion section, the flutes, talking about the brass section. What I also like is he was finding this balance of, I'm going to be talking about individuals. All of this is reading to a summation of, now let's talk about how that impacts the ensemble. He talked about 3 or 4 instances, and then it was like, okay, now that's led me talk about uniformity in blah, blah, blah. This type of field, leg shape was a great term, which I really, if it's not a part of your vocabulary, is being able to evaluate, using that term and give it a certain level of excellence. But it was the flow, I thought, was really nice from individual back and forth, leading to some ensemble comments.
Well, and when I edited this one for today's exemplar experience, you notice how much more as a visual judge that there's spoken word. Because unlike the music experience where you're having to listen so closely, again, as a visual judge, you're still listening. Don't get me wrong. You're still responding to, because the music can influence the visual and you want to make sure you have an understanding of where time and pulse are. But at the same time, you do notice that, at least I find for me, when I'm judging the visual sheet, I do feel like I have space to talk a little bit more, just because I'm not having to pay such close attention to that sonic environment, that I'm really just paced by my eyes. And I do feel okay about reacting to one thing, and my eyes can look at something over here while I'm still talking about this, and I could jump forward into that. So you may find that your pace is different when you're practicing. You may find when you're judging the visual sheet that your pace feels a little different, and I think that's okay. And I think you're going to notice that in these next two exemplars as well, is that their pace feels a little bit different, and that is 100% okay. So let's dive into the next one. We're going to jump over to an example of a 2A school. This is Ted Wemhoff doing the visual sheet for a 2A school. This is a state marching contest clip, but I think just a great example of just the clarity of Ted's pace is a little bit different, but I think it's super helpful to the group, and he has some great advice.
Good sense of musicality through the stage. The combined responsibilities here, body underneath while playing, certainly handled well. The slower effort qualities, extending range in terms of what you're asking the performers to. Good detailing through the lower body in terms of musicality relative to the musical phrase. Good sense of interval control here on the compression of the form. Good performers showcasing some really strong training in terms of the body underneath, the musical phrase. Really appreciate the way that this opens up for the low brass from a design standpoint. That really works well for you. Just be careful, those two lines that are gating around the exterior as that opens up. It could have been a little bit clearer. Appreciate the challenges on the performers here in terms of velocity, in terms of varied stride length. Really leaning into their technique and training and doing a really good job. Good sense of musicality as you work into the curvilinear form. Really, again, showcasing the varied ways that the performers understand guiding form through that curvilinear. Being able to maintain interval control. Again, good sense of musicality with the expansion of the stage. Appreciate all of the playing while on the move as well. Some slight discrepancies in terms of the to-the-box movement, but overall, really strong opening. You guys really lived up to the challenge. There's a lot of difficult drill there, a lot of curvilinear that you really challenged the performers in terms of showcasing their technique and their ability to guide form. I think they did a really good job throughout. Congratulations again on as you're looking to continue to build your program. Really, again, I can tell you stress technique, but really stress technique at varied tempos, and maybe think about having different techniques or different ideas about technique, whether forward and backward at those slower tempos, because you can see a little bit of breakdown at the slower tempo through the ballad, but it wasn't bad. It's just you could tell the difference. They seemed a little bit more comfortable at the faster tempos, but overall, really strong performance. Really enjoyed it. All my comments have been helpful, and I want to wish you the very best. Congratulations again.
So in Ted's commentary, I think I included his wrap-up on the exemplar. And again, the whole file is available online if you want to listen to it. But I included his wrap-up because that opportunity to offer the group things that they can work on going forward, and saying like your ability to move at these faster tempos feels great. And it's things that he referenced in the file, right? It's things that we heard on that exemplar that come back into his wrap up, and it's kind of what we talk about in his use of scoring specific language and getting to all of the nuance and all of the details. I also want to credit him as a visual judge, talking about the frequency of playing while they were moving. He didn't just focus on the visual element alone. He talked to individuals, he talked to ensembles, but he also recognized the challenge of the performers in that, hey, it's not like when you play you're standing still and when you move you have your horns down, but it's that he was actually able to credit the challenge involved in some of those moments and get into the individual, the ensemble, and also into the training.
He used the word musicality, and you would think on a visual sheet, when would I ever say that? And it was in regards to understanding the coordination. This is happening here. What I see, the movie that I'm seeing matches the soundtrack, and I'm showing a nice flow. I'm showing a nice evenness, just like I'm trying to do in the musicality. You can tell he's a fan of the program. You can tell he's really excited, genuinely supportive. You mentioned the recap, the same type of idea. He was giving some growth opportunities, kind of more inspirational of let's grow this. This is great. What a great starting point. Or this puts us in a wonderful place for now, even kind of getting the next level. Addressing the challenges of the performer is definitely key. He's got such a keen eye, and talking about the level of excellence usually was followed up with, I see this happening here, the lower body responsibilities, and then immediately it was to what degree? Yeah, this is good, this is great, keep doing more of this.
Yeah, just so smart. And again, if I'm a student, I listen to that. If I'm a band director and I listen to that, I understand everything. If I'm an administrator, there are a couple of things that are maybe above my head, but still I go, wow, what a positive, take. You can tell just from his tone, even if as an administrator, maybe if I didn't understand all the things that he was talking about, at least I'm like, wow, I'm really proud of our kids and proud of them for, advancing to this level and having judges at this level, comment like that to them. We have one more visual exemplar. This is Hugh Wynn, talking about all things visual. Again, this is a state marching clip, but I think it's a really good one just to show what that visual pacing and commentary can be like.
All right, completely surrendering yourselves into the floor here. Postural alignment for the percussion. Some slight variations here, so make sure those butts are tucked underneath you, but they're engaged, present. Color guard here now. Just want to keep those feet nice and pointed as you work through the shaping of the attitude. You have reverb qualities, release the fists and the shaping of the arms coming up. Excellent core control for the mellophones as you coming up. Detail through that level change, significant, superior control there. Excellent. To the initiation of the tendu, emphasis of the plie, visual musicality, quite strong. Percussion as well, excellent level intensity. Churn out, rotation, very compelling. Wow. Handling this slow, broader stride, relationship to one another. Flutes over on side 2. Excellent. As you shift weight from side to side, orientation is extremely consistent. Color guards, you want to find that suspension quality and detail as you work that flat position before you go into the ground, and ensure they're not kind of plopping on down, but elevated responsibility through that inverted position. Percussion, working the backup technique, yes, gliding through that space ever so successfully. As you shift your weight to the left side, backup orientation, backfield. Wow, so confident, controlled, excellent positioning through the churn, centering principles for the flutes and the trumpets. Very compelling. Clarity is exceptional. Clarinets up front, brass. Such pronounced posture, clarity through those initiations. Excellent. And those starts and stops, well achieved. Some slight wobbliness for the percussion as you work through, going from left to right here. Reversal and change direction, some minor opportunities there. Maintaining postural alignment consistency. Reach for the gestural quality, side 1 for the wins. Very direct. with that rotational, detail, centering principles as you work through the simultaneous responsibilities there. Trumpets constantly centering, adjusting. Magnificent. Flags. Working that tempo change. Sabers. Shaping the attitude. Lower body enhancements are really quite positive. Left to right hand. Yeah, a little bit more looseness to the wrist. So you move through space. Yeah, excellent wrist control being demonstrated. Mellophones coming up the props with strong confidence. Sidestepping here. Ha! Yes. Strong. A variety as you cross those yard lines. The core connectivity, the constant centering there is exceptional. Amazing in regards to the quality, control, consistency. The characterization comes to life as well, and you're certainly tapping into a deeper level of awareness and expectations. Crossing over to side one now.
So I should have noted to you ahead of time that this is a state contest, but he's down on field level, which I thought it was just an interesting image into the idea of the individual marching commentary. Impressive.
Sure.
What are your thoughts?
Well, first thing on my judging bingo card, he hit more terms than I've ever heard, and I filled up my card and then some. Mm-hmm. I loved his vocabulary, and I felt like, wow, what a descriptive way that he just was cross-sectioning each of the terms. So, kudos to Hugh, and he's such an outstanding judge that we all can aspire to be. You can tell he has a color guard background, which is helpful in the sense of being able to notate that, talking about gestural kind of ideas, left-hand implements, but he immediately would jump right to the mellophone section and be able to talk about every kind of combination, whether it be lower body, upper body along the way. I liked his genuine expressiveness in the sense of being surprised to a moment, and I love that it wasn't always clinical, but he would you could tell he was moved and caught off guard by something, then he immediately addressed what it was and to what degree, and I would love that to be able to have that kind of approach as a judge, where it doesn't come across as I'm just trying to analyze constantly, but I'm analyzing with a look at how you affected me, and look at how I'm giving you credit. You could tell he was a fan from the beginning, and to the levels and the gradations of what they were choosing to do, how they were achieving those.
Well, and to borrow like the Ted Lasso line, he's curious. Mm-hmm. He goes in and he's like, I'm going to be curious about everything I see, and I'm going to start by asking the question, do I recognize what that is, measuring it, and then rewarding it in turn. And I think, too, what I find so interesting about all of these exemplars we've heard, if I were to make a positive-negative column, I would bet of all these, I think we heard 7 exemplars, I would bet that my positive column is twice as full as my negative column.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we accept that role, and we're speaking to our newer judges here, we accept that role thinking, my role is to be a critic. It is, don't get us wrong, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a fan. It doesn't mean that you can't be enthusiastic about what you're seeing and hearing, because look, if these groups have advanced to area, they're exemplary.
They're above average.
Yeah, these are exemplary groups. So now it's like we want to make sure that they hear they're exemplary, but it's also important that we point out, and I think Hugh does the reason I wanted to finish with this one, he does such a great job of pointing out the things they do that are exemplary, and he's always got that little bit more, the band director, the one more time, let's just get one more out of this, oh guys, if we could just get this one more. So I think it's such a fitting and neat opportunity to dive into. Let's talk, we're just going to kind of wrap up the visual section with a discussion about color guard, as well as a couple of other points before we get to this next quiz and bring our veteran judges back. We have a sheet that's in the drive to help you with color guard. Some of you have strong color guard backgrounds. Perhaps you had the opportunity to teach color guard. Perhaps you performed in a color guard setting at some point in your career. That's great. Some have, I don't have a ton of experience in that area. And so it's an opportunity for you to go, what are some things that I can comment on? Because those color guard students are out there for the same 8 hours and same summer band and same all of these things. The difference for them, in a lot of cases, though we're seeing more and more of the middle school color guard thing, a lot of these students as freshmen are near beginners, right? And here they are at area. Imagine if you had to take your beginner kids to area and have them march. Like, that's scary. And so we want to make sure that we honor and give them the dignity that they deserve in those performances. And so what are some of the things that you can talk about? I'm just going to read you like a little list. We're talking about the height of the toss and the rotations, the pathway into the release, right? Is it straight up release, or is there a spin that comes before it? What is their catch position? Is it flat? Have they chosen to do a one-handed catch? What's the body doing while the toss is in the air? Are they manipulating equipment with a shoulder roll or something like that? Again, just like Mark was talking about sampling earlier, you're going to sample the color guard and take a look at that phrase, that visual phrase, just like you would a musical phrase, and ask yourself, what nuances am I noticing inside of that 8 or that 16 count phrase?
Maybe a good training to do is getting ready for area. Find an ensemble that has a color guard, and then only comment as a color guard judge. Like just say, this particular layer I'm going to try to identify. How hard would that be for all of us that are wind players, based on don't have a lot of background, but where you're really forced to dig down deep, and then you think about, okay, now I can balance that with individual marching responsibilities, noticing the color guard areas. Keeping a cheat sheet in front of you is really good to have those terms to not only say, here's what's coming up, but like, I'm looking for the word, there it is. Yeah. I'm able to catch on the equipment.
And on the content front, does it complement? If the band is playing forte, does it feel like the flags are at forte, visual forte? If the band is, if the rifles are picking up a woodwind moment, does it feel like the 16th notes are visually there in the rifles? How about just evidence of training? Do they, again, I'm going to use the musical term because I think that's where we're all most comfortable. Do they start and end phrases together? Do they start the phrase at the same visual dynamic level? Do they finish the phrase at that same visual dynamic level, or does the phrase taper off? And if a wind section was doing that, if a battery percussion section was doing that, we'd be all over them about not shaping together. But yet, in the color guard world, I think that that's something that we can watch and very easily have a good understanding. How about recovery from error? We know that the wind's going to blow. It's going to be, they're going to take a toss and something's going to blow a few yards over, but do they recover with poise and professionalism, or do they look, kind of frantic getting in and out of there?
I think any musical term or musical objective would be applicable to color guard. It's balance, it's articulation, it starts and stops. Dynamics, again, like you're saying, does it match? I think any one of those you feel comfortable saying, you could apply that with a couple little nuances to apply to your color guard observations.
Absolutely. And two, like, watch transitions. Unlike not say, it does happen in the instrumental world where, maybe your mellophone section is going to set down their mellophones and pick up concert French horns. We all know, like, all the panic alarms that just went off in our heads as I said that to you. You're like, oh, they're going to be out of tune. And
this mouthpiece,
the whole thing, right? But think about the color guard who comes off the field and puts down a swing flag and picks up a rifle, right? That they're going through that same transition. It's a different skill set. It's a different feel in their hands. So take a look at how they transition. Do they remain in character? And the challenge of doing that, and the guard there to communicate musicality, communicate nuance and emotion, and all of those things. They're the visual representation of the music that we're hearing. Does it align? And if it does juxtapose, does it juxtapose in a way that, again, if you're curious, that you're like, oh, that's interesting, the band's playing pianissimo and there's this really big guard moment, but maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe the show is intended to do that.
To use your stage analogy, there's very few times you get to hide behind a curtain on the marching field. There's a couple panels here and there, but again, remaining to sustain that character role you've asked me to watch you at this big moment, and I'm still watching you, and even though you're transitioning, you become pedestrian. Hey, I'm just kind of trucking now. No, I need to still be light and flowing all the way to the point to pick up equipment. I've been asked to do that, but you address those things.
Yeah, and I think that as you dive deeper into it, I'm going to kind of segue into this next section, and this is going to loop back into music here a little bit, but it's also going to stay on the visual side, which is, be sure that as an adjudicator, we're looking for involvement. We're looking to see how many students are involved in a given moment, right? That one, again, we'll stay with color guard for a second here. That one rifle toss, super impressive, right? She tossed a 5, caught it, great. 5 kids doing it, 5 times as impressive in my mind.
Right.
24 kids doing it, mind-blowing.
It's huge.
Right? And so the same thing is if we hear that one trumpet player who sounds phenomenal, that every program at the area level has a great trumpet soloist, versus a trumpet trio that's, again, now, okay, you've got my attention, versus a section of 16 trumpets that all sound like one. Now, you know, as a band director, the amount of time it goes in to teach that, and the amount of training that goes into those kids to make that moment work.
Yeah, giving it up not only for that key superstar, but like, wow, when the whole ensemble could do that, that's something you recognize immediately and can say that took a lot more to go do that versus the one person.
And think too about where things are positioned on the field. Thinking about environment as a new judge is really important as well. Look for, again, a moment where the brass section is playing together and they're all between the 45s. There's challenge to that. Versus a brass section that's spread 20 to 20. That's a whole different challenge.
Yes.
Right? And so understanding that, or a soloist that's having to be in time with another soloist when they're standing right next to each other on a platform in the front ensemble, impressive, but not mind-blowing, versus a soloist on side 1, 20-yard line, a soloist on side 2, 20-yard line, and they're playing in time together. We all know that those environmental considerations have to weigh into our assessment. Again, we're a little bit in the content box here, but we're also talking about the performance. Think about what does the performer demonstrate. What they're demonstrating is a depth of understanding of precision and timing that is at a whole other level.
An area that comes to mind that musically, as I'm judging the music ensemble, a battery percussion group generally is behind the ensemble and pretty far back. They've come up for a feature, and then there's still another moment where they're contributing, but then I'm anticipating, oh no, they're going to be too loud, and then like, wow, they did a great job of fitting in. You commenting of like understanding what it took for, hey, we have to rewrite the parts here to make it thinner, more subtle, something where it's going to fit into the idea where it was maybe needed to be impactful beforehand, but what it took for them to still be front and center, but then like the focus be somewhere else. Give it up for them and say that was great, because I know what it took to do that at that level, and the planning and the what and the how, that was huge.
Yeah, and so to wrap this section, be as genuine as possible, and if you're impressed or surprised, as you heard from these exemplars, be impressed or surprised in the recording. Give the kids an awesome or a wow or an amazing if something really is amazing to you. I think that we're wired as judges, as band directors, to be in that constant kind of critical analysis.
Clinical.
Yeah, I mean, it's who we are as people. It's probably why you're as successful as you are, is because this is endemic to your personality. But I think that, too, we have to maybe regress to that place to where it was also very exciting, and that we are the biggest fan of these groups who are coming to area, and we want to support them. And very likely, for the majority of groups you hear at area, you're the last file they get this year. I mean, that's a sad reality of being an area judge, that of the 30, the 25 groups you're going to hear, 6 or 7, 4 or 5 are going to advance on. Everybody else is done for the season. So what is that last thing that you say? Congratulations, this has been amazing, love this. To what Ted said at the end of his, give some opportunities for growth going forward. But again, you let them know how incredibly proud of them you are for advancing to this level, because they've certainly put in the work.
Yeah, what an important role we have educationally when you are the final word on marching season. Wow, that's a lot of responsibility we all have.
It is. And so with that, we're going to wrap the new judge portion. Quiz number 3 is linked below. There's also a QR code currently on the screen. You can scan that with your second device, or you can click on the link below to take quiz number 3. If you need to go back and pick up quiz numbers 1 or quiz number 2, those are both linked there. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with all of our veteran judges and everybody who's judging area here in just a little bit. thank you for our new judges. We so appreciate you hanging with this training. You're going to jump over to another link. It's provided in that useful links document. You'll jump over to the veteran judge training. It may have started a little bit ago, and you can jump on and either rewind it and catch it from the beginning. Some of the introductory material is stuff that we've already covered together, like Dr. Kent's intro and things like that. So you may find that you can skip through a little bit of the beginning, but we'll catch up with you as we get into it. So we'll see you over there on that other live stream. Thanks again for joining us.